minutes, or hours, it appears to be for us things are moving because there's minutes and hour related to our lifetime is very small, so it looks like things are moving. But if there is a life form which has just 2 seconds, for that life, if something is taking 5 minutes to move, in that its lifetime, that didn't move, right? But you can look the other extreme also. Something it takes 20, 30 years to move 1 millimeter, to us it will appear that it's not moving. There is no mobility. But imagine if there is a life form which lives for 10,000 years, we live only 80 years, for that life, this 10 years or 20 years is very small. For that life form, that movement would still be significant, right? Now, do you imagine that this idea, this concept, how it is relevant and useful for the food? Have you studied or read any time in food science or food technology or food engineering textbooks, glass transition? Yeah, we are referring to the temperature or glassy material, or glassy food, or food in a glassy state. That's technically more correct. Have you read anything like that? Yes? So what does it mean if the food in a glassy state?
So maybe that is also a highly viscous liquid which seems solid.
If that is the case, let's say a given food is in a glassy state, how that information is useful to us in the sense food industry, or food scientists or food engineers?
Flowability will be very low, very, very low.
Yeah, its flowability will be very, very low. Okay, so what? If I say that many of the dehydrated food products, milk powder, coffee, tea powders, they are in a glassy state, right? They are actually amorphous material. They are not crystalline really. Solid could be amorphous, it could be crystalline, like metals are crystalline, right? They are amorphous, they are viscous, but viscosity is so high that you do not see any molecular mobility in that, or even if it is there, it's very, very low. How that is relevant to us?
It has its relevance in processing or transportation. Means in pipe flow, if we want to suppose pack it, then we'll have to continuously flow it through some channel, or like if it is too much. If it is in glassy state, then we have to put more energy for its transportation rather than being it in liquid state, or like little viscous.
Anybody else?
Can we set the process temperature or any temperature of storage based on the fluctuations in the because the product is more unstable above that. It is the temperature at which material turns from glass state to rubbery state. During drying and all, we used to see the glass transition temperature, whether our sugar will be sticking to the drums inside the drum, or it depends on the glass transition temperature. Each material is having different glass transition temperature. Sucrose is having different glass transition temperature, glucose, fructose. These kind of things we will be studying.
Are you able to follow what he's saying? So he's referring to glass transition temperature. That's the temperature. If the material goes through it, the glassy material will become rubbery. So let's say any material has a glass transition temperature of 50 degrees C. It means that less than 50 degrees C, the material is glassy. If you heat that material and it is more than 50 degrees C, then it is a rubbery, right? And a rubbery means less viscosity, has more flowability, right? But if you reduce the temperature, so we were giving example of water, milk, honey, right? Rather than giving a different example for the different material, for the same material, let's say honey, if I reduce the temperature, what will happen? It will appear more viscous, right? And keep on reducing the temperature, at some point what will happen? It'll attain the glassy state, right? And when it is a glassy state, what is the characteristics of the glassy state? It's brittle. Its viscosity is extremely high. If viscosity is extremely high means? Almost solid, and almost solid means from shelf life perspective. Our chemical reaction perspective, what will happen? It is more stable, because any chemistry to occur in your material, there has to be diffusion. Like two components will react, right? These two components has to come together in order reaction to propagate, right? So for propagation, there has to be diffusion of these components in the food. For diffusion, this molecule has to move. When we say move, they don't have to really travel from, lot from one place to another place. It's a molecular movement. So in a glassy state, this molecular mobility is extremely small. Because it is extremely small, the reaction do not propagate with high speed. They propagate with very, very slow speed. And because all your dehydrated product are stable, right? You have 2-3 shelf life, because in those reaction to occur, it takes that amount of time. Because there is no water, it's a very high viscosity material, and extremely high viscosity material, the reaction does not propagate quickly. Yeah? In order reaction to propagate, it has to have a moment, but the molecular mobility is extremely restricted. In fact, in the glassy state, there is no translation of molecule. It is only vibration and rotation. Because of that, all reaction propagate extremely slow rate, and then you have a good stability of dehydrated product. So this is the fundamental basis of having longer shelf life for all dehydrated product, because almost all of them, depending upon the type of product, they are in the glassy state. So that's about food. How you think this glassy state would be relevant to polymer packaging? You give one example that in a glassy state it becomes brittle, right? Any material, when it becomes a glass, it's brittle. It's a mechanical strength, right? Like a glass itself. But let's say, other than glass, I'm coming up with the polymer packaging, let's say. Do you store anything in freezer? Do you store anything in freezer? Do you cook? You cook. Sometimes leftover is there. What do you do with that? Maybe it's not a right example here, we usually throw here. But back in Europe and America, people don't throw the food very easily. Environmental microbial load is very, very low. So people cook and keep it for a week, 2 weeks in refrigerators. And sometimes you know that you're not going to, eat it in a couple of weeks, then they tend to store in a freezer, because freezer, there's just frozen. Most water is converted into ice, so your product is more stable. So leftover some sweet, let's say gulab jamun or whatever you have, people tend to put it in a freezer. And freezer, nowadays most of the containers for storage at home, they're made of plastic, right? And those containers which are plastic, flexible at room temperature, right? And room temperature which is 25, 30 degrees C, then you put your food and put in those plastic container and store it -18, because the freezer temperature is -18. So at very low temperature, what happens to viscosity? Viscosity increases. You lower the temperature, higher the viscosity. higher the temperature, lower the viscosity.
Yes, for
Higher
liquid.
the temperature, higher the viscosity.
Higher. Higher the temperature, lower the viscosity for liquid cells.
Okay? Okay. It will get thin. I mean, if you have a thick honey, if you increase the temperature, it appears to be thin, right? So, if the higher the viscosity, it turns to be glass. Viscosity can go so high that it could turn into glass, and glass has a property, it's a brittle. So many times it happens, you store in a freezer that, I don't know whether you get a Rubbermaid plastic containers here. It's a company called Rubbermaid, or for that matter, any company. It's just a plastic, high density polyethylene, which appears to be very flexible at room temperature. If you put in a freezer, and if you happen to remove from freezer, and if it falls on the floor, it will break like glass. But if it was at room temperature, if it falls, the plastic is not going to break, because at room temperature it is a rubbery state, it is flexible. Okay, so that's the relevance of this glass transition concept in the polymer. Of course, there's a lot of other things, but I just give you one example because we had started this yesterday, this discussion in the lab. Okay, let's go and start with this. It's the advanced packaging materials. So what does advanced means here? Somebody yesterday was mentioning, sometimes we say emerging, which is emerging today. After 30 years, it becomes conventional. What is novel today, it becomes conventional after a couple of decades. What is advanced considered today, it may become thing of everyday use. But anyway, what I'm talking here in this, there are some of the recent advances in packaging materials. So, we have 4 materials which are normally used for packaging: metal, glass, cellulose-based, and polymer, right? So in terms of the glass, not too much of advances, just the glass. What are the advances that has happened over the year in glass? Do you see anything what our grandparents used with the glass and we use something different today? They use the glass jars. We also use the glass jars today. Do we use something else from that glass? Or there were glass bottles for Pepsi or Coca-Cola. Today also those are glass bottles for Pepsi and Coca-Cola, right? Anything else we use from the glass? No, that's the replacement, but from the glass itself, there's not significant change. At the most, now the glass has a less breaking. They have improved the breaking strength. They are more resistant to breakage. Sometimes you would see this Corning ware, these ceramic plates. If you happen to, it happens to fall from the table or from your hand, they do not always break. Sometimes they would break, but sometimes they would not. So they have improved the breaking resistance. Other than that, there's not much really improvement in the glass. But there's a lot of improvement with the metals, and most of them is actually with the polymer. So I'm going to cover some of those advances with these 2 materials. So in terms of the metal cans, this figure is from US alone. They produce 133 billion cans every year. Can you think of it, how many these cans are? Do you know what is the population of US? 330 millions. Sorry, I'm using millions and billions. So yeah, you're right, it's 33 crores. So if you divide 133 billion with approximately 330 millions, how much it will come? 400 cans? 400 cans per person every year. So at least each person is using 1 can every day, right? So that's the amount of number of cans being used in that country. And they have several different plants. They produce or manufacture metal cans, and they say 22,000 people are employed. So this figure will tell you the difference per capita consumption of cans between different parts of the world. So US uses 400 cans per capita per year. Europe has 73, significant lower, and rest of the world we have 15 cans. So as you can see the difference, you can imagine people don't cook at all there. Okay, so let's say in terms of those cans, I'm sure you have studied in your food packaging class, we had two different types of cans. What are those two different types? Two-piece can and? How can be single piece? Okay, three-piece and two-piece can. Okay, so in three-piece you have lid and bottom and the body, and in two-piece you have lid and the rest of it is just one. So, and if you notice that most of the thermally processed food product, vegetable, meat, and fruits, they are usually in three-piece cans, and almost all the beverages, whether CSD or beers, they all come in two-piece cans. So this is one of the advances. Of course, it has been there for a while. It is not very, very recent. Is that you have an easy opening end. So most of these vegetable and meat processed in cans, how would you open this lid or end? You have the can opener to open that, right? But beverages cans, whether soda or beers, you have this kind of opening, right? Is it the same like this opening here, or is it different? So there are two types. One is you can just pull. The other one, in the second one, as you say that this goes down and then opens. And in this case, you pull the whole thing up. Have you noticed this difference? Yeah, so these are two different design. In terms of the improvement, now you would find cans, they're not just perfect cylindrical cans, they have lots of graphics, shapes, and embossing, that is a printing. So you can see that different kinds of prints and embossing on those cans. In terms of the shapes, also you can see that they are not just vertical cylindrical cans. Okay, in this case, the mid-height diameter is lower than the top, so that you can hold appropriately, very well in your hand. The printing is such that they have sometimes thermochromic ink, sometimes you have photochromic ink, and sometimes you have wet look, sometimes they glow in the dark, and sometimes they glow under the light. Have you seen these type of cans? Thermochromic ink means that if you change the temperature, the ink intensity color will change. So, for example, some of the soda cans, they are at room temperature, they don't appear very fancy, but then if you lower the temperature, because you drink cold, they can give you different look. And photochromic is the ink is going to change its intensity based on the light. So during parties, if you have a low light or a lot of light, they can give you a different look. Sometimes people have been, advertising, doing promotion on the can lid itself, as you can see that here. So that's the advances, in terms of the printing over the can. There was a lot of complaint or, sort of questions that from metal you cannot make a glass, you cannot make the bottle. So they came up with the bottle, which is not made of glass, but is made of metal. So as you can see that, do you see these kind of bottles here? So now they started coming in the market. I'm sure sooner or later it's going to come here as well. But what is the problem with this bottle? Sorry? No, they are made of aluminum, so it's a lightweight. and it's a thin wall. It doesn't have to be very strong. It's like, your Coca-Cola can, right? The problem with these kind of metal bottles was that you cannot open and close. Like in a glass bottles, you have a cap, right? You can open it, the cap, and if you don't consume the entire drink, then you can seal it and keep it back. So they came up with also resealable, metal bottles. So then now you can see that they are very recent, so they are not there everywhere in the market, but slowly they are coming. Now, rather than having just the cylindrical vertical cans, you would see, especially for the seafood, you will see this thin profile packaging. Why we call thin profile?
Longer but
You have larger surface area and less thickness. So in this kind of geometry, you can have as much as volume as in a cylindrical can, but then you have a larger surface area for the same volume, and that helps to reduce the processing time because the distance for heat to travel from top surface to the center is minimal. And you also have this pouches, right? The pouches also the flat geometry like this. So the overall, heat transfer is better in this kind of a geometry. So that's what's the metal packaging. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about polymer packaging, because polymer packaging also being used a lot with packaging our different food products, including high pressure processing technology as well as microwave-based technology. And in terms of the advances in polymer packaging, now industry has started combining the different polymers and making multi-layer structure. As you can see here, different films, so these films are made of polymer, can provide you different mechanical, thermal, and gas barrier properties, because one kind of a polymer cannot give you all the properties. Some films are good in sealing, while other films are good in giving a barrier property. They give you a very high barrier property, but you cannot seal them very easily. Yesterday we saw that sealing operation in one of the lab. That was polyethylene. It was very easy to seal, or polypropylene easy to seal. But if you have PET or EVOH based film, it's not very easy to seal. So then in order to have sealability, we provide inside either polypropylene or polyethylene film. Some film let you do good printing over it. Not all polymer allow you to do good printing, but if you have a polymer based packaging, you want to put the label on it. Rather than putting the label from paper, if you can print it directly on that package, then it gives you more convenience. So then some polymers, they give you good printing surface. So using this, strength, individual strength from this different polymer, you put them into the multi-layer structure. And sometimes you can incorporate oxygen scavenging chemicals or moisture absorbent or desiccant into these film structure to further improve its performance. We also have a technology where rather than improving the barrier property or other properties by combining the film, you can do the deposition of metal oxide on the film, because metal oxide give you good crystalline structure and it can give you very, very high barrier properties. So this is another advances in the barrier film. This we talked yesterday that you could incorporate the nanomaterials into the polymeric structure and it can improve significantly the barrier properties. In addition to barrier, it can also change mechanical property as well as thermal properties depending upon the type of nanoparticles you are incorporating into your polymeric structure. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, that you have now active packaging technology. In case of active packaging, into the package you have your food product, and with that food product you can incorporate either the absorbing system or releasing system, right? And then this will modify the atmosphere within a package with this intention that is going to extend its shelf life. So for example, in this case of a meat packaging, you see that this meat slices, and then you have this sachet which contains some chemicals. But these chemicals are not actually directly coming in the contact with your meat. What kind of things may be there in this sachet? Can you think of it? Silicon oxide. Why there will be silicon oxide?
Absorbs the moisture.
Why you want to absorb the moisture?
Because if bread comes in contact with moisture,
No, it's not a bread. Let's say it's a meat.
even if meat comes in contact with moisture, there will be microbial contamination growth.
Well, meat is high moisture product. It would be the oxygen absorbent, right? Some places you would have the moisture absorbent. I'm sure we buy a lot of different product, not necessarily food, where you have the moisture absorbent. When you buy your cell phone, in that box, you would see that this kind of a sachet, which has a silicon oxide to absorb the moisture. So in this sachet, you could have moisture absorbent, or you could have oxygen absorbent. But what about the releasing? What kind of things we may want to release? You want to release some antimicrobials. So absorbing systems are, you could have for oxygen, it could be iron or some metal-based materials which can react with the oxygen and can consume the oxygen. So either you could have in the form of sachet, as you see in the previous slide, or you could have embedded into the polymeric structure. There is a chemical available in the market named Ageless. This is the oxygen absorbing chemicals. This is very popular. It is produced by Mitsubishi in Japan, and they are marketing all over the world. Sometimes you have one-way wall. This also gave example yesterday. For example, in coffee bags, you could have this one-way wall, as you can see here, and that's to release CO2. And as you give the example, you could have ethylene absorbing sachet. Why we had to absorb ethylene? You can slow down the ripening, because ethylene is the ripening hormone. So if you take away the ethylene around your fruit or ripening fruit, and then you can slow down its ripening process. So this is how you absorb the oxygen scavengers into the polymeric structure to improve the barrier property. How does it do? So if you have this oxygen absorbing additives into the polymeric structure, as oxygen is being diffused from outside to inside because of the partial pressure difference, rather than coming inside in a contact with the food, it will be absorbed within the polymeric structure. And this process will continue till it gets saturated. So far, in terms of moisture absorbent, as you mentioned, silica gel or calcium oxide or activated carbons are incorporated. And that you would be using with the dehydrated product, right? Because for dehydrated product, you don't want moisture gain. So before moisture come in a contact with your dried product, it will be absorbed by materials in the sachet, and this will keep on going till this gets saturated. And in terms of the releasing system, you could have ethanol, CO2, antimicrobials, antioxidant, sometimes flavor or nutraceutical. Why we want to have the flavor release?
Sometimes during processing flavors might have
Correct.
to recover.
Yeah. So let's say if you have a lot of flavor in your food, and then during processing you may lose the flavor, or even during storage you may lose the flavor. So somehow you want to incorporate flavor in your package, and just before opening, or at the time of opening, or at the time of consuming, it should release the flavor, right? So this is example of antimicrobial packaging, that in the surface on the film inside it is coated with antimicrobials, and these volatiles are being released into the head space, and then it is retarding the growth of microorganisms. So this way you can extend the shelf life of your product inside the package. And in Israel, they they developed this nano-coated paper. So they have some nanomaterial. I remember somebody gave the example of silver. Yeah. So some of these antimicrobials, they are coated on the paper, and then that you use paper to wrap your food product where there's a possibility of growth of microorganisms. So this is the one. Have you seen this? So this is the one which is, I was telling you, it says Aroma Water. It's a company, Sensational. So in this case, what they have in the cap, they have the flavor inside. And when you are opening the cap, it breaks the seal. So it is there in the top of the cap, and it is protected from the layer. So there is no mixing of flavor into the water, but when you open the cap, it breaks the seal and releases the flavor into your water. You just shake it and then drink it. What would be the advantage with this rather than adding flavor directly into the water?
You'll have full effect of the flavor.
Sorry?
Full effect of the flavor.
Well, I can disperse into the water and let it be in the water. I don't have to design this expensive bottle. See, I'm sure you all know that when the product is dry, it is more stable. Anything in an ecosystem with water, a lot of chemistry goes on, right? So when you have flavor or spices which are dry, you have longer shelf life. So if you mix the flavor initially with the water, it may give you a couple of months of shelf life, because a couple of months you will have some degradation kinetics and your life is gone. But if the flavor is dried, it may have several months. And water, of course, if it is sterilized, you can store for a long period of time. What about this one? Well, when we use the straw, for drinking the liquid, then you can have flavor molecules within the straw. So as you are sucking your water, it is picking up the flavor from this straw where you have the flavor molecules before you drink. So now this will open up your mind in terms of the creativity. So when you go back to your college, you can think of these creative ideas for the companies. So this is another one. In this case, rather than flavor release, you have the nutrient release. Again, when the nutrients are also in a dry form, they are more stable compared to when it is mixed with the water in the ecosystem. This is the example of a film which can change its permeability based on the temperature. So this packaging is developed by a company named Lendic Corporation, and they call it IntelliPack. And it responds to the temperature in very predictable manner. So usually what happens when the temperature changes, you remember we were giving example of modified atmosphere packaging. So your fruits, vegetable, what you have in that packaging, its respiration depends upon the temperature, right? That's why when we store them at low temperature, refrigeration temperature, you have extended shelf life, right? Compared to if you have fruits and vegetable at room temperature, right? So, for example, you store at refrigeration temperature, and based on that, you have all calculation of modified atmosphere packaging, you have certain film. But what about during transport, during handling, there's a temperature rise. If the temperature rise happens, then your respiration will change. If the respiration characteristics change, the inside atmosphere of O2 and CO2 will change, and if that changes, then it's going to affect because that's not optimal anymore. You did optimal design based on the refrigeration temperature, right? You had an optimal gas composition based on the respiration at refrigeration temperature. But then the temperature changes, then your respiration will change, and then your composition inside will also change. So the film permeability requirement will also change, but if it is the same film, then it's not going to be very effective. So they came up with the film which would change its permeability. So if you increase the temperature, it would change its permeability. So this is being used for fresh cut vegetables. I'm sure you must have seen this self-heating cans. Have you seen that? What is this self-heating cans?
The pouches, self-heating pouches available.
So there are self-heating pouches available in the market here.
Just for display.
Actually, this kind of cans are mostly used in military.
That's correct. But the food company wants to sell you also now here. For example, some of you are coming from Chennai here. You like particular of sambar or recipe which is available in Chennai. It is not available in NIT Rourkela. And during lunchtime you want to have it because you are here for 6 days and you are really starving for that recipe, right? And you don't have time here to cook because you are busy in learning. So during lunch break, you just go, break the seal of the can. So here you have your product, in this case, coffee or tomato soup, but you could have your sambar here. And then in bottom, you have again 2 chambers. In one chamber, you have calcium oxide, and another chamber, you have a water. And there is a seal. If you break that seal, it will allow water to mix with calcium oxide, and then what will happen? Exothermic reaction, and that exothermic reaction will produce heat, and that heat will heat this wall, and then so it is highly conductive, it's a metal can, so then whatever fluid you have here, this will also get heated. So you shake a couple of times, and within 2-3 minutes, you have a hot sambar, right? Isn't this a nice idea? Yeah, so these are now getting popular. So when you're doing camping, you are going to different university to attend short course like this one. These are very useful and handy. So some people thought, why should we have only self-heating cans? We can have self-cooling cans. The principle is just the other way around. Rather than having exothermic reaction, you can have the endothermic reaction. So now you don't have to carry the ice with you in order to have the cold soft drink. So you all know about active packaging. Have you heard intelligent packaging? So what is intelligent packaging? So what is intelligence? Sorry, one at a time. So
Indicates what are the changes in temperature. It shows a reading of temperature.
okay.
Using sensors, we can able to determine the changes in temperature.
Right. So this intelligent packaging is able to communicate with consumer what's going on here. If consumer is looking for some information there, if something has happened, and if consumer wants to be warned by that packaging, then this packaging is able to intelligently communicate the information to the consumer, right? So have you seen this kind of indicators? No? So these are getting very popular now. So these are basically chemical indicators, and they have adjusted the chemistry based on whatever you learned in first couple of lectures about chemical reaction kinetics, right? In chemical reaction kinetics, what was the principle? Well, at certain temperatures, some reactions are happening, right? And with this reaction is happening, with time, it is forming the concentration of that compound, or is deteriorating the concentration of that compound, right? And this chemistry or this reaction is temperature dependent, right? So you could have a color chemistry that any color, right, if it's subjected to certain temperature, it would change its intensity. Okay, and we can control this chemistry. We say we want this. If the product has a shelf life of, let's say, 21 days at refrigeration temperature, so we want to design a chemistry of that compound that initially it is, let's say, in this case, blue, dark blue, and then within 21 days at refrigeration temperature, it will turn from dark blue to empty, no color there, or very, very light blue, right? So then, rather than putting the shelf life there, 21 days, or expiry date, we just see the color, and based on that we decide the product has a shelf life or it's gone. Why there will be need to do that such that, I mean, everybody can read, so we can print rather than having these indicators. Because if there is a temperature abuse, then that expiry date does not work. So for example, if any product, let's say pasteurized milk or juice, has a 21 days of shelf life at refrigeration temperature, many times what happens, we come in a supermarket, we pick up milk bottle or juice bottle, we put in our trolley, we roam around for 1 hour, and then we decide that I'm not buying. And we don't have courtesy to go back to the same place and put it in a refrigerated shelf. We will put it somewhere at room temperature. It's lying there for 6-8 hours, and the grocery person walks around and says, oh, this milk bottle is the wrong place. He takes this and puts it back in the shelf, right? Now this milk has been exposed to room temperature for 6 hours. You think it will have a 21 days shelf life? No. And then if consumer happens to buy that milk, takes home, and within 3 days it spoil, he's going to jump on a grocery store, he say, hey, you are putting here a label for 21 days and this milk or this product is gone within 3 days. It's not my fault. But it is not the fault of the grocery person, and it is not fault of the company who is pasteurizing or manufacturing that product, right? So to overcome this, temperature abuse problem, rather than having expiry date idea, now they said, okay, fine, let's put these time temperature indicators whose chemistry would be adjusted in a manner that, because we have learned that higher the temperature, lower the shelf life, right? So we can change the color chemistry in a manner that if the product has a shelf life of 8 hours at room temperature, then if it is left at room temperature for 8 hours, it will just change the color and it'll tell you this product is expired. So that's what these indicators are. And they come in a various different forms. Sometimes you have like this, and then with time, this circle will get filled, and you will have the big dark circle. Sometimes they have like this, that when it is a fresh, it is like this. And with time, they change color like this. So if it is low temperature, there is a slow change in color, and if it is a high temperature, it's quick change in the color. Okay, so this is how, and they can adjust in a chemistry in a manner that whatever shelf life you have, those temperature range, they can adjust the color intensity for that range and shelf life. Sometimes you have, like this. If it is like this, it is very good. If it is faded halfway, still it is good. But if it is like this, so you are comparing these with this. So this is going to really change. So if this looks like this, it is good. If this changes to like this, still it is good. But if this becomes like this, then just throw it away, it is expired, right? And sometimes you have an indicator to indicate thaw and sell. It means that these products are really frozen for a long period of time, and then before selling, they just want to thaw. It's like frankfurters or sausages, that you want to bring it at refrigeration temperature, so they are thawed, and then you want to sell. So those indicator. Sometimes you have like this, that you have a barcode, right? Now I'm sure here also all the package label, they have barcode, so you can scan this, right? But then if the product shelf life is gone, because this ink is a color sensitive, then it will turn like this, and then it will not allow even grocery person to even scan this because shelf life is done, so you're not supposed to sell that. Although these are not very popular. Can you think why these are not popular? Yeah, because grocery people do want to sell you even if it is expired. Okay, others, sometimes you have certain food product, they have very long shelf life or some shelf life, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever. But once you open, then they don't have a long shelf life, right? For example, if you have a tomato ketchup bottle, you get a room temperature, it may have shelf life of 6 months. But once you open it, then you have to put it in a fridge, and then even in fridge it's not going to last 6 months. So then your shelf life should be based on once you open that. So some of the indicators takes care of that. And then you have some indicator like a thaw indicator. What are the thaw indicator? Some product, if they thaw, then its quality is gone, even if you refreeze again, such as ice creams. So ice cream, once it melts, then even if you refreeze, it's not same anymore. So, for example, some grocery store or some brands, they don't want to sell this freeze thaw, ice cream to consumer because, their brand name will be affected. So they have this label here that says, its chemistry is adjusted such that if this surface becomes, temperature more than 0 degrees C for a certain period of time, then they will see melting of this ice cream. Then this will change the color and it will tell that the product was thawed. So then what grocery people can do this? They can throw. Company can tell them, hey, don't sell to the consumer, return back to us. Or they can give it to food bank where people come and want to have free food. So, they can decide whatever they want to do it, but they don't want to sell to the consumer because it can affect their brand name. And this indicator is actually for oxygen sensing. So, for example, in this case, it's a fish. It's going to have a lipid oxidation if it come in a contact with oxygen. So in this case, you have a sachet on that label. You have the ink which change the color based on the absorption of oxygen. And then if oxygen is getting into this package and has reached to the level where the chemistry is enough to give you off flavor, then this will also change the color of the sensor, and then that's the end of its shelf life. So they don't want to sell the oxidized fish, to the consumer. Yeah, see these other example, but the principle is same. Sometimes you have, like this, but if it expires, you will have this cross, and then again, this the barcode is gone, and then you are comparing this with either with this or this. Sometimes you have, this is not a color slide, but sometimes have a green flower is fresh, but the red flower color is just throw, or use or do not use. If it is thaw and frozen, this will go, dark color and will say, hey, do not use this. So like that, they can have any kind of indication depending upon the local consumer, what kind of a sign or information they want to communicate with consumer. Again, this is the same, it's a barcode. If its freshness is gone, then barcode is gone. This is the same. Or gradual change in the color. So this is a reference belt, and this is one which is changing the color. So if the color reaches to this, then it's not fresh anymore. What is this one? Do you eat pears?
Yes.
What is the problem with pears? I don't know this Asian pear or Indian pear is same as American pear, but I'm going to bring it out, the problem with the American pears. You know what is the problem with the pears?
Its outer skin is very tough.
No. So the American pears, the issue is that you can never tell how ripe it is. Okay? So, some people like very crisp, some people like firm, some people like juicy, but by looking at it, you cannot tell, unlike banana. Like, based on the banana color, you could imagine very well, or you can, of course, press, to see how ripe or how soft it is. But that will not work with pears. So people don't buy pears because, they don't know when to eat, right? So they are not intelligent, but they need a packaging to tell them when to eat. So people like you, scientists like you, they came up with this indicator. And so this is the one. And you know how this indicator works? Because it senses the volatile. That volatile we are not able to sense, but these indicators or sensors are able to sense, and based on that volatile, they have the chemistry and it would change the color. So if it is this color, let's say it is crisp. If this changes to this color, then it is firm. And if changes to this color, then it is juicy. So the difference between time temperature integrator and this freshness or ripe indicator is that in case of a time temperature integrator, you are measuring the temperature of the environment, okay, and then you know the reaction kinetics in your product of that quality parameter based on the temperature. So you are not sensing the quality of that product directly. What you are sensing is the temperature, and based on the temperature, you know how the chemical changes will happen in the food. So it's an indirect measurement of the quality. But in case of this freshness sensor and ripe sensor, you are sensing the volatile compound which are being produced as a result of ripening or as a result of spoilage. So for example, in this slide, so the indicator is especially developed for the fish. So as during fish is being spoiled, it is going to produce some sort of off flavor, and that off flavor is basically volatile compound. They have some chemistry, and then they would interact. Something is there on the label, and that interaction would change the color, and then the certain amount of change in color will tell you the fish is spoiled. Okay, so this is the direct sensing of the food quality. So there are some other sensor which can sensitive to the relative humidity or humidity in the air. So this is also very relevant to the dehydrated product. So on that packaging, if you have, and if somehow this product is exposed to higher relative humidity for a certain period of time, which you know that if this product is exposed to higher relative humidity this amount of time, then product will spoil. But you cannot see that spoilage directly from the product. But if you have that indicator that changes the color, then you would know that product would have spoiled, right? So for example, that indicator, as long as it is showing 20%, you know if the product is exposed to 20% to 40% relative humidity, there's no problem with the quality. But if it is exposed to a certain period of time for higher relative humidity, and if you see red color, then you will think the product is gone. Sometimes you have this packaging which can tell you whether it's a counterfeited product or not. So if you have the original product in a bottle sealed with this kind of a sealing, right? And if somebody can open the bottle, remove the original product, and put some duplicate, product into it, then you would know. Because for that you need to remove the tape, and if you remove the tape, it's going to put the print there that this is open. So this is actually not in food, but actually medical packaging. This is common. And sometimes you have this RFID. What RFID, and now we have this Q code also. QR code, yeah. So you just scan it, and it can tell you history. So sometimes consumer would like to have a lot of information about that product. If it's an animal product, where it was slaughtered, what was the origin, whether they were slaughtered based on the Islamic, sort of guidelines or not, So that lot of information you can't put on a package because there's a limited space. So you put all that information, on somewhere on the server, on the web, and then just you have a code, yeah, and they just scan the code, and then it can take you to that place, and then you can have all the information about the product. So this is the about the greener packaging, which is a bio-based packaging or biodegradable packaging, and there's a lot of interest because synthetic polymer is going to produce a lot of environmental problem because it's not degradable, right? So we were talking during the tea breaks, and so this, tons and tons of garbage we are producing from synthetic polymers, and waste handling is a big problem. So then scientists have been interested to have biodegradable and bio-based plastic. Do you have here in India some bio-based, biodegradable? So there have been some experiments, and they have been limited success. For example, this packaging is made of PLA, polylactic acid, right? So this lactic acid based on the starch, and then you polymerize. So this is a bio-based. This is not actually biodegradable, but it's biocompostable, right? But so still, it is better than, the plastic which is not degradable. And you also have this, I'm sure you must have read in water bottle as well as Coca-Cola bottle, they call plant bottle. You know what is plant bottle? So this bottle is made of what, generally? Which polymer? PET. You say PET bottle, right? It's very clear, very high quality. So it's a polyethylene terephthalate. So this is this molecule that come from the crude petroleum, right? So it's a synthetic. So you are using actually, and this is the carbon emission. You're producing greenhouse gases, right? So it's a problem for the environment, right? But what they are doing they are using the plant molecule and converting into PET. Okay, so the origin is not from crude oil or synthetic oil. It is from the plant. So in this bottle, actually 70% PET is based on crude oil, and 30% portion is based on the plant. So this way you have, you're recycling the carbon. So because for plant, you need to grow the plant, which is capturing the carbon from the atmosphere. And then when you throw it, this carbon goes back to the environment. So you have good recycling rather than just adding, which you are doing from the petroleum products.
Means the Coke bottles which we purchase, we can plant them, like we can dump them in the...
Well, then you need the different kind of facility, because as I said, it is not the 100%, and PET will not degrade. So this PET is actually has the same chemical structure as the synthetic one. It's just the origin is different.
So what good does this?
Well, that you're not depending upon the crude oil. So in later, if they come with the some sort of a degradation of this, whether photo degradation or any other method, then you would be able to degrade, you will be able to recycle. But right now, it's just that the raw material is actually from bio-base, not from the crude oil. This is for your generation. Have you seen this inductive coil on the package? No? How do we charge our cell phone now?
Wireless charging.
Do we have the wireless charging? Right, so you just take a cell phone, just put it on the pad, and start charging. So when people thought we can do the wireless charging of our cell phone, why can't we do heating of our soup? So for example, you hardworking engineer sitting in front of computer all the time, working on the computer very hard, and this is lunchtime, you go pick up a soup, you warm in a microwave, you start eating, and then you are sitting in front of computer because you're working 12, 14 hours a day, and then you forgot to eat. Then you find, oh, the soup is cold now. So you again go back and rewarm in a microwave. Rather than doing this, if you have that pad on which you can just keep your cup like this, which has the inductive coil, your soup will be warm. So that's the advances in packaging. Do you like it? Yeah.
Then what will you be doing after using that?
You just throw. People are looking for convenience, right? We buy a mobile phone, we keep it for 6 months, we just throw. We buy the new version, right? New model. See, we always think of environment for others, not for ourselves, right? When I want to use it, I don't think environment. But if others are using, I'll make the comment. So we will make comment about synthetic polymer, it's not recyclable, but when I'm traveling, I'll buy the same water bottle, drink it and throw it. That time I'm not going to think about the environment. So this is how it is. Okay, so your generation has to think all this. We didn't think that much. Okay, so other advances in packaging is from microwave susceptible. So I guess I did talk about this in one of the classes before, that you cannot have the crispy texture from the microwave. So they thought, we want to use microwave, that's for sure. We don't want to the grill and toaster. We want to have a crispy texture on our product. No time, it's just the microwave. In fact, in most developed nation, people have forgotten, how to even cook anything. So just go out, buy from grocery store, just throw it in your microwave, heat it, and just eat. And I'm sure here also some people mention RTE, ready to eat, right? So we here also, there's the same trend. We don't want to cook, right? So, high moisture product cooking, microwave works very well, but as you all know, you don't get crispy texture. But still we want to use microwave. So then packaging engineer came with the idea of using the susceptor. So now in US, and I'm sure here must have come also, you have pizza which you can do the cooking in microwave rather than in oven. So you buy this frozen or refrigerated pizza. The base is there, sauce is there, toppings, cheese, everything is there. It's wrapped with the plastic film, so you can see, nice colors and all vegetables over there. But if you bake in an oven, then it's fine. But then in oven, we don't want to wait 20 minutes because we don't have time. But if you put in a microwave, it's going to cook, but you will not have the crispy base, right? So they have this in the bottom, what they call microwave susceptors, and it gets heated in the microwave because they are thin metal. So they are poor conductor for the current flow, and they're going to generate heat because they have some resistance. And so they get very hot. And then if they are touching the dough, base in the bottom, then you would have the crispy texture. They also have microwave shielding. So in case of a microwave shielding, as you know that we have non-uniformity in a microwave, and sometimes if we have two food products and both have a different dielectric properties, right? And we put same time into the microwave, what will happen? One product which have a high dielectric loss factor that will heat much faster than the other product, right? Or people were also imagining that if you have a multi-compartment tray, have you seen that many times? These dinnerware plates, food service items, right? You have multi-compartment tray that when you have a buffet, in one compartment you put rice, in another compartment you put curry, right? You have this. But imagine in this tray, you have rice, you have a curry, you have vegetables, and you have also some sweet, right? Or ice cream. And everything is in a fridge or freezer for the longer time of storage, longer shelf life. So people want to pick up that from fridge or freezer. You want to put in a microwave and heat it. But then you want to heat rice and curry, but you don't want to heat salad. You want to keep salad at refrigeration temperature, right? Salad means you have cucumber, tomato, onion, or whatever, right? Or you have a little bit, what do you call here, ras malai, that kind of product which you want to eat cold. So if you put everything in a microwave, everything will get heated, right? So then they have what they call microwave shielding. So you have multi-compartment tray, and the film on it is actually not same film. In that film, the compartment under which you have the cold product and you don't want to heat it, then you have the shielding from the microwave. So you have film which will not allow microwave to penetrate, and it will only allow microwave to penetrate for the other two compartments. And even there, if one has a high dielectric loss factor, so this will heat faster compared to the other product, right? But you want both product, let's say rice and your curry, to heat exactly same temperature. Then what you would do, you allow microwave to penetrate less in a product where you have the high dielectric loss, because with a small amount of microwave energy, it's going to heat it. The other product, you want to have more amount of microwave energy. So the where you want to have less microwave energy, you provide partial shielding. So 30% area you cover with the shield, and the 70% area will allow microwave to transmit. So this way you can bring uniform temperatures within your food products, or whatever desirable temperature in your food product because you are doing the shielding of microwaves. So this is the another advances in polymer packaging, which is the self-venting microwave pouch. Can you think of it what this would be? So what happened, there were certain food products where in these kind of a plastic pouches, and they are refrigerated or sometimes frozen depending upon the type of product. And the instruction was you put in a microwave, heat it for 2 minutes, and then it's ready to eat. But then the instruction was there that you open the bag, then you put in a microwave. Well, the young generation says, I don't want to read it there. So you just open the microwave, throw it there. Then what happened, if it has a high moisture, it's going to produce vapor. If you heat it, few minutes extra or few seconds extra, the vapor pressure would be way beyond its seal and it's going to blow up. So this happened few times. Rather than teaching the consumer that please read the instruction and then follow that instruction, engineers like you, they thought, rather than having burden on the consumer, we will help the consumers. They came up with this technology where they had this valve on the pouch which will open when the vapor pressure inside reaches to a certain level. It's like any equipment, we have boilers, you have safety valve. Those kind of valve, when it reaches to certain pressure, it will open and release the vapor, and this way there's no blow up of your package. That's it I have. Any question? If now you can imagine anything which is not there in the market, that brings in opportunity to do the innovation. Yes?
Can you use the nanoparticles into the canning, metal canning?
Well, nanoparticle has been used for the purpose of improving the barrier properties, while in case of metal cans, there is no transmission of gases.
High acid food and low acid food, we have different cans. So, just replacing different types of the cans, we just put the nanoparticles and use the one can for all types of the food.
So the different can means you're talking about inside lining. Enamel, correct. So enamel will allow not to come in a contact with the metal can because of the acid, acid reactions. So that's the purpose. For that, if the enamel could be based on nanoparticles, that's possible because you want to avoid the contact with the can. But most of the time, nanoparticles have been used either to improve barrier property or change the mechanical property or change the thermal properties.